Today's video is a buyer's guide in 2025 about the major M releases that Leica has done on digital. And one of the #1 questions I'm asked in my DMs and emails is regarding buying older Leica cameras. So today I'm going to explain in this video what I always recommend to people looking to pick up their first digital Leica. But before I get into all of this, I have a very transparent request. In the last month, I've had, according to YouTube, 70,000 unique viewers watching videos on this channel. And if you are one of them and you have not subscribed, I'm just gonna point blank ask you to consider supporting this channel with a subscribe. This number really matters to the powers that be in keeping this channel running, which means that my ability to make videos like this one is connected to that number as well. And I'm grateful for every single sub, so please hit that button and walk with me on this journey. So I actually owned the Leica M8 for a bit. It was released in 2006, which makes this camera nearly 20 years old. This camera has a crop sensor, and that alone turns many people off because the focal length isn't true to what the lens says. It's got a 1.33 crop factor, which means that your 28mm is really a 38, your 35 is really a 47, and your 50 is really a 67. And the M8 is definitely dated, but you simply cannot beat the colors from the M8 sensor. It was developed in collaboration with Kodak, and my God, it is beautiful right out of the camera. Also, I really love the M8 shutter. It's probably one of my favorite shutters in any digital camera I've ever used. Now, there's one other drawback to the M8, and it's that you have to use an IR cut filter to get true colors. The sensor did not have an IR cut built in, which means that your blacks become like brown and ugly. This was corrected in an M8 update called the 8.2. Now, the M8 is old and you will feel its age, but it's still a fun camera for today. And you can find one for right around $2,000. The M9 is probably the most sought after vintage Leica. It was released in 2009 and it also had that Kodak CCD sensor. The colors right out of the M9 are what many believe are peak CCD colors right out of a camera. The M9 was a full frame sensor camera, but it did have issues. The sensor corroded. Leica had a replacement program for their corroded sensors, and if there is an M9 out there today, odds are the sensor has already been replaced. This camera had 18 megapixels, and I would say that's still respectable today for most photography. If you come from a film background, 35mm film was never endlessly cropped. What you shot was typically what you shot with minimal cropping or reframing. And the M9 is basically this and then some. The M9 is still very much alive and well today, and I know plenty of photographers who use this camera in their full-time photography, like my buddy Wayne at Leica San Francisco. The M9 has been his camera since he bought it new 15 years ago, and he's still using it today for all of his work. And that's a testimony right there. You can find the M9 today for around $2,500 to $3,000. I'd say the M240 is the first of the modern line of Leica cameras, but it's also a bit of a one-off. This camera was their first camera to have a CMOS sensor, which is just a more modern sensor. And this sensor in the 240 is 24 megapixels, which is still relevant today by really any standard. This is probably the most affordable and reliable entry into the Leica M system today. The M240 was released in 2012, which means it's 13 years old, but it's still a very capable camera. One of the big things about the Leica M system is that these cameras aren't packed with tech that needs updating. And for that reason, this is why many people today getting into the Leica M system will start with a 240. Now, this Leica is big. It's fat. It also has video features, which is kind of a weird idea for an M. And this was the only model that did this, by the way. The M240 also has a lot of complexity with dials and buttons. I really feel like the M240 was like a techie camera. But the M240 works great. It's available really in abundance, and you can find one typically for right around $3,000. The M10 is very relevant today. This camera was released in 2017, and in my personal opinion, this was their best design. It was basically an M6, but digital. It has that bottom plate like every M before it. It had a 24 megapixel sensor like the 240. It had great colors right out of the camera, and all around it was basically a perfect camera by design and function. I really loved my M10, and as a full-time photographer with the M system, I'm gonna share a little more about why I don't shoot the M10 today and why I'm using the M11. I'll do that in just a minute, but I always recommend the M10 to people that are looking for an M that's like a step up from the 240, but not necessarily like all in financially like on the M11 line. It's going to be hard to talk about the M10 line's limitations without getting into the M11, so as I share about the M11, we'll cover those. Now I want to take a minute and just acknowledge that we've been talking about the main camera releases, and there are variants of each of these that can feel like a minimal change or even a major change. Like the M10R, as an example, was more of like an M10.5 than it was just a variant of the M10 line. Some may even say that the M10R was like the peak of the classic M experience in a digital camera. Now, every camera we've talked about has these variants, and so you typically will have the P version, which is for professional. You'll have the D version, which doesn't have a screen. You'll have the monochrome version as well. Then you have those special editions, and then you get the point. The feature sets are gonna vary within those variants as well. And as an example, like the M10 line had the M10, it had the M10P, the M10R, the M10D, and then the M10 monochrome. 5 iconic cameras in their own regard. And then they even had special editions. I mean, they all have the same design, they use the same batteries, and they're built off of the exact same systems, but they're very different cameras depending upon which one that you get. You can find these M10s or any of these variants anywhere between like $4,000 to $5,500, and honestly, it goes up for the special editions. Now, whether you shoot on a Leica camera or not, let me invite you to join me for a workshop later this fall in Grand Teton National Park. This is a storytelling workshop focused on building a body of work. You'll have a chance to experience some of the most beautiful places in the world, all while building a personal portfolio. To learn more about the details of this workshop, hit the link below and check out all of the information. Spaces are limited, so be sure to register today if you want to join along. So now let's get to the current flagship camera, the Leica M11. This is a camera that I use today. If you've been around a while, you may recall that I had an M10, and then I had an M10R, and then I had a chip on the motherboard of the M10R go out and need to be replaced. Leica was going to take 8 weeks to get that repair done, and at the time, I was fully booked up as a commercial photographer and just could not go 8 weeks without my camera. I ended up buying a Leica M11 with the intent to sell it and keep the M10R when the M10R came back from repair, or I would keep the M11 if we were vibing well and just sell the newly repaired and warranted M10R. Well, I obviously sold the M10R. So here's what it came down to with the M10 line, and it was the same experience with the M10 and the M10R. So on the M11, the battery life is really insane. It lasts forever for me. With the M10R and the M10 prior, I had to carry multiple batteries to get through a day of shooting. With the M11, I can easily shoot an entire day. Charging the M10R and the M10 before it required me to bring a power block for the battery and that cable that went with it. Recently, I was on a shoot and I was so tired the night before, I actually forgot to charge my camera. It made it almost through an entire second day, but towards the end of the day, I had to plug it in. And I did so by plugging a USB-C cable into the camera and then plugging that into a power block in my pocket. And sure, I looked ridiculous walking around, but the power ran my camera and charged it while I was out shooting. The M11 is a beast. It has a 60 megapixel sensor, which means like endlessly cropping. It has a battery life that's awesome, which means endless shooting. And that USB-C means no friction when you're taking it with you. I do feel like I traded that classic experience for some shiny tech, but it made me more efficient. And when time and effort is money in your business, well, that's a good trade-off. The M11 is far from perfect. It initially had some software that was really buggy, but I think all of those issues are resolved now. My version never really had any issues. I've been very fortunate, but I know those issues did exist. Also, the colors out of the M11 have a magenta shift, which may or may not be intentional, and really, color comes down to personal preference. And if you shoot raw with the intent to edit, that color shift, that magenta shift, it's pretty irrelevant. With all the current variants of the M11 and more to come, there really is something for everyone. You can find the M11 used for right around $6,000, and it just goes up from there depending upon the different variants you may want to look into. With several digital Leica cameras on the market, both new and used, and at multiple price points, there really are so many options out there for you to get into the M ecosystem. With the M8 and the M9 becoming retro collectibles at this point, and the M240 and M10 line being the most accessible while still being modern, those cameras can be good investments for the long haul. Of the several Leica M bodies that I've had, I have always bought them used and sold them for the exact same price I bought them for. The M11 here was my first new Leica, and while I fully expect to take a loss on this camera should I ever sell it, that will be my exception and not my norm. So if you're looking at buying an older Leica, you can buy with some sense of security because you're likely gonna be able to sell that M240 or that M10 for what you have into it today. Because eventually you may want to upgrade to something more modern. I mean, digital cameras aren't gonna last forever, but as long as it's in working order, you can have some confidence. Now I'm interested to know what Leica you are currently shooting or which one you are considering picking up. Drop a comment below and let me know. And remember to sub if you haven't already. And if you found this video helpful, be sure to give it a like. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.